Well, good evening, everybody, and welcome to this first public online talk from the Contemporary Art Society for Wales in 2026. Our speaker this evening is Nigel Prince, the director of Artes Mundi. Good evening, Nigel. Got to ask you to unmute. Yes, sorry. There we go.
Evening. Thanks, Roland. Hello, everybody.
Right now, I think Nigel will be very well known to many of you. He took up his post as director of Artes Mundi in 2019, just in time for COVID to arrive. Having begun his curatorial career at Tate Liverpool and then working as curator at Icon Gallery, Birmingham, before becoming executive director at Contemporary Art Gallery, Vancouver. Nigel has agreed to take questions at the end of this talk for those who are joining us on Zoom. If you want to ask a question, just put your name into the chat box. Don't have to give me the question. And when we get to the point for questions, I will explain how this works. So, Nigel, it's over to you.
Okay, great. Thanks, Roland. Well, I can't see everybody, of course, but welcome everybody. Nice to know there's an audience out there wherever you're beaming in from, and on a rather sort of cold and damp and grey evening. So it's very good that you're all here. Some of you may have been along to the National Museum when I gave an in-person talk right at the outset of the show back in autumn of last year. So chatting with Roland, it was suggested that maybe I focus on the two prize winners for the talk this evening. That is Antonio Paucar, winner of the Artes Mundi 11 prize, and Sanchintya Mohini Simpson, who is the winner of the Derek Williams Trust Artes Mundi Purchase Prize. So I've got a series of images, installation shots of the exhibition of those two artists to show you, and to speak a little bit about their practice, and to then take any questions, and hopefully I can answer them. So maybe if I share my screen let me make sure I've got things open. Yeah, okay. And hopefully everyone can see that opening slide. Yeah, great. Okay, so thought I'd start with Antonio, and just as a little bit of background for those of you who may or may not be aware, for this edition of Artes Mundi at the National Museum, there is a group presentation of all 6 of the shortlisted artists that really acts as the jumping off point, the focal hub, if you like, or that's the intention, whereby in galleries off the main hall on the ground floor, the long, thin galleries, there's the group presentation. And so alongside that, each artist then has a more in-depth overview of their practice, a solo presentation, which is at other galleries and institutions throughout Wales. So Antonio showing at National Museum, and right up there on the north coast at Mostyn in Llandudno. So I've got a selection of images for both artists that are mixed together from all of the works on display at each venue. So I think the first thing to sort of draw attention to, I think, with Antonio, is that ultimately he is an artist who makes performances, but not necessarily live performances in a gallery space. More often than not, they are actions that are made for video, and then it is often the videos themselves plus perhaps an object that is seen to be made within the moving image work that is presented alongside of it. And there are a number of constant touchstones, both theoretically or contextually, conceptually, as well as materially, that are very present in his practice. One that'll become very evident in a formal sense is the use of rather sort of elemental forms, circles, spirals, lines. And in many ways, this lies at the root, I think, of his practice, which is about bringing he's a Peruvian Andean indigenous artist from Huancoyo, which is a sort of plateau in the mid-range mountains of the Andes within Peru, and from an indigenous group, indigenous community who that has been their ancestral home for a long time. And in many ways, in speaking with him and thinking about that, how he brings that his own upbringing, his own sense of place into dialogue with Western culture is one of the hinges, I think, of his work. And in some ways that is expressed materially or through image and shape, but also through the thematics that are present in the work. So here's a group, an installation shot from Mostin, and here's the installation shot from National Museum, and very apparent is the circular motif. So this work, I think I wanted to start with. It's called Felt's Centrifuga, and what you see is Antonio enters into the screen, lying down. It's shot from above, lies down on the floor, and then uses the extremity of his body to draw this circle. So he revolves his body around. I think if I go back to the early slide, you can see there how he's sort of spread-eagled across, touching the perimeter of the circle to create this drawing, this constant reiteration of this circle, and inscribing this circle into the earth. And in many ways, that it sort of reminded me of some of those sort of fantastic large-scale earth drawings that we see if you ever visit Peru, or certainly online, those aerial shots of those. Sometimes it's a recognizable form, like a frog or a monkey. Sometimes it's lines that are drawn, and that touches, I think, into a lot of similar things around the world. Most evidently here in the UK, Stonehenge, these sort of pre-civilization almost monuments to some kind of other set of values and beliefs. And so this circular motif, this sense of connecting to place, is very much one that gets echoed through into other works. And why I wanted to start with that, because I think it very much brings home immediately the sense of him as a person making this work. It's working with the extremities of his physical body, of what he's able to, but also that inscribing the circle itself also, I think, speaks to this connection to place, connection to the landscape, and brings the circle into the dialogue of Western art making. Then here at the National Museum, there is the double circle on the wall, a work called Circulo de Antiplano, and this is actually made out of a series of hair braids, braids of hair that Antonio discovered in a market, in a plateau market within the Andes, and was immediately speaks about being very viscerally shocked by this. They're braids of hair that paradoxically are then bought by Peruvian women who have maybe left that area to go and work elsewhere, like in the capital in Lima or elsewhere in South, Central, or North America, but then return home because when they're taking part in the traditional rituals, they need their long hair to take part in that. So that sense of the influence of the Western economies within the peoples. And he said he was quite sort of shocked to see that this hair was available to purchase as a sort of straightforward economic transaction. He talks about his performances as being an act of being in the world, and as a way to register a connection to place and to where he's from, and somehow bring that, as I've said, into dialogue within a Western culture, drawing these analogies, these connections between the two. This was a work that was actually made in the museum when Antonio came over for installation. It's an expanded version of a smaller scale existing work that he wanted to enlarge upon. And so the video you see on the wall is actually filmed there in the museum. And what unfolds during the video is the making of this spiral form that sits as a sculptural object in on the floor. It's made from alpaca wool, black alpaca wool and white alpaca wool. And really, in many ways, it's a sort of a yin and yang idea, you know, a sense of reciprocity, that the black is defined by the white and the white is defined by the black, and neither could exist without each other. Or a larger, I think, from a much broader metaphor within society and within structures. The other thing about this is that the black alpaca wool is getting increasingly difficult to find, because the farmers and the herders of alpaca are sort of breeding out this wool because it doesn't take dyes well. It's much coarser in texture. It doesn't weave into yarn as well. So the demand from a predominantly Western textile industry is not sort of seeking this, and so is causing that shift in production as the farmers try to continue to make a living, which is perhaps very different to their ancestors. So as I say, the video unfolds to show you the making of this. He actually weaves the balls of wool together. It's almost like a kind of hand knitting, a hand crocheting, and then arranges it within the spiral form. Another work using alpaca wool is on show at Mostyn, the sculptural piece, the wall piece that then hangs down. It's called Ilapa. This, as you see on the wall, the sort of cloud-like forms of black, brown, and white alpaca wool that are then held in tension, and strands of yarn that have been woven come down to create a central column before then coming apart again, and as it were, as the individual balls of wool onto the floor. This central column is a traditional woven pattern. One that goes back centuries to that part Huancayo, as I say, where Antonio continues to live and work. So again, bringing together the materiality of place, bringing together the traditions of place, bringing together historical patterns that are then made into this sculptural piece that sits alongside histories of Western art making using textile. And maybe a final piece I wanted to speak about is perhaps one of the most quietly political. I think all of the work in many ways has a sort of quiet political aspect to it. And really is a summation of I think where Antonio's thinking is very much now at the moment, which is around how around Huancayo, within the mountains, the traditional communities and farmers are having to deal with climate change and the climate crisis that is not only affecting the mountains there, but consequently how they're able to grow crops, but also within these mountains, because of their mineral content, various extraction, sanctioned and non-authorized mining that is polluting the waterways, polluting the water systems that are used to irrigate crops and grow crops and sustain life. So it becomes an ever decreasing circle of bad influence. So this piece is called El Corazón de la Montaña, comprises a video, and then in front of that, a table and chair with a handwritten inscription. And it'll become evident when I show you the next few slides how that work is made. So the video starts with images of the mountain range. This is the ancestral landscape of Antonio's peoples, where there is it is actually designated a protected area. There is glaciers, and that glacier is retreating now because of global warming. The waters that have traditionally been used by farmers to irrigate and help grow crops and sustain life, that is becoming increasingly difficult because of the glacier retreating along the valley. But doubly, it is also becoming increasingly difficult because, as I mentioned, this mining activity that is polluting the water sources. So the video opens with the view of the landscape, and it makes a 360-degree turn around, so you fully understand the environment in which the work is being made. It then arrives at a point with Antonio sitting at a simple wooden desk with a bare chest. And then you see a connection of this transparent pipe, like a cannula in his arm, that goes through to his other hand, and then he starts to inscribe on the piece of paper in his own blood this phrase, which is in his own indigenous language, which is Waka Chechuan, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. And again, that language is also disappearing because of the Western influence and the rural depopulation, the sustainability of life being challenged through the climate crisis, through the mining. The mining polluting water sources. So again, that language is also being lost as well because of these external forces, and so that whole environment that sustains is under duress. And the phrase that is written there translates as the heart of the sacred mountain is weeping blood. In its own sense, a complete distillation, I think, of and a rather sort of poetic distillation, I think, of the effects that are transforming the environment, the landscape, but also the ancestral home of and the sustainability of those peoples continuing to live in this environment. A piece at Mostyn, again, another new work that Antonio made. He's always keen to make connections and, if you like, thematic parallels across place wherever he makes work. So the title of this piece, which comprises the video screen on the wall, the two rectangles of earth on the gallery floor, and then the two imprints on the wall, is Voltereta sobre la tierra del Fatido. which again translates as somersault on the land of Llandudno. So what the video starts with is it pictures Antonio walking barefoot on the Great Orme. All of us, I'm sure, are very familiar with the rather sort of dramatic landscape there, looking down into the onto the beach and the bay and the town of Llandudno. So he's seen walking through the landscape, through a standing stone, which he was amazed to. He didn't know there were standing stones in Wales, and was really sort of interested in that sort of historic connection of how different civilizations have made their presence felt within the landscape. So you see him traversing the landscape in some sort of way. And then the video shifts from outdoors to indoors, and you see him entering the space at the gallery space in which you're apprehending the work. He stands in front. He stands with his feet planted on the two rectangles of soil, and then makes this handstand, which creates leaves his imprint of his 2 feet. Sorry, leaves the imprint of his 2 feet on the wall. So again, a way of quite sort of poetically, or also quite literally making a sense of, this is the land on which we stand, this is the land here in this part of North Wales, but there are connections thematically to how we engage with landscape, how the landscape sustains us in different ways to different parts of the world. Just before I finish with Antonio, one thing I should say is he, as the winner of the prize money, he is proposing, where he lives, his studio is an old adobe building that his grandparents built. And he is proposing to use the money, investing the funds into that village, and converting some buildings into museums for the traditional art making. Sculptures, like little hand carved. Some things are like woven pieces, like I've shown you in his work. Others are textile works. Others are hand carved and hand painted wooden sculptural pieces. And so to make a museum of that local art making history, and to have a public program and an arts, as a sort of an informal art school, to teach the future generations of the traditions and of the sense of place and of location. So I think that's a really rather interesting proposal, I think, of how he, as an artist, he is wanting to use his profile, his presence, his visibility, and invest in very real terms into his local environment to help sustain future generations. So a great legacy, to think that we have played a small part within that. The other artist then, as I mentioned, is Sanjintia Mahini Simpson, who's the winner of the Purchase Prize. And there are at least 2 works being acquired for the National Collection of Contemporary Art for Wales. And this is a long-standing partnership since the very first edition of Artes Mundi with Angedfa Cymru. So again, another legacy that I think another great legacy that Artes Mundi is able to sustain through the National Museum, obviously through the support of Derek Williams Trust, but again building legacy for future generations. This time on our home soil here in Wales. So Sanjintia is an artist who lives and works in Brisbane, Miegyn, in Australia. Her parents were indentured laborers who were forcibly brought from India to work in the sugar plantations in South Africa. And that family background really does form the springboard for all of her work, be that thematically, conceptually, contextually, materially, and becomes very self-evident in the imagery that is used in the works on paper, or in the sculptural pieces that she makes. So here's an installation view of Sancintia's part of her exhibition in the group show at the National Museum. Two works, the piece on the wall, which is called Kuli Karambu. That's on loan from the Museum of Contemporary Art in Sydney, Australia. Just to give you an idea of scale, the complete work comprises 15 sheets of paper. Each one is 88 by 63 centimeters. So a very large scale piece. And then there's the sculptural piece on this small table-like plinth of ceramic work. This piece then, the loan we have from MCA Sydney, it's a rather interesting collision, I think, or bringing together of different traditions of representation. On one hand, it maybe has echoes of Western map making, cartography, but also of the sort of dreamscapes, the aerial view of Australian indigenous peoples, those aerial views of landscape as a different non-Western perspective, a non-Western way of understanding the landscape. And also it also brings together within the aesthetics the traditions of Mughal Persian miniature painting. Sancintia trained under a sort of master of traditional miniature painting in Jaipur. And so this all sort of overview of the landscape with the sea, the lushness of the plantation, the river running through it, the bottom right-hand corner of the stubble being burnt off, ready for the new planting, the huts that the women working in the plantation are in, the factory for processing the sugar plant. It's a sort of complete visual description of what is going on in this particular part of the world. The details are really quite exquisite. I mean, in a sense, the images don't quite, even a detailed image like this doesn't quite do justice to the intricacy and the surface patterning that is very self-evident if you visit the museum. But all throughout it are depictions of women, in particular women's work as the unseen work, or as the invisible work, or as the uncelebrated work, or as the devalued labor, is again a constant within Sancintia's work. So you see women involved in domestic chores, bringing up children, being attacked by some of the male workers, scenes of violence. I mean, very evident, a woman who has been attacked in the bottom right of this panel, and all this horror, if you like, both in a very literal pictorial sense, but also in an implied sense through understanding what is going on, alongside the mundane, the everyday. As I say, women looking after children, tending in the fields, cleaning, involved in a lot of those kind of domestic works. Then juxtaposed at the National Museum is this piece called Sugar Vessels, 3 vessels that Sancintia made in partnership with a ceramicist in Brisbane, and the work itself, and especially also through the artwork label on the nearby wall, really describes everything that is, in a sense, that is there in front of you. 3 pots made out of clay, made out of the clay of the earth. They've been the equivalent of almost like a raku type firing. So that's very visibly present and very tangible within these sort of smoky surfaces of the pieces. And then alongside the 3 pots, which are symbolic of 3 states of being, is a broken pot, the shards of broken clay, the ground down clay. So if you like, returning that fire clay to the earth, to like a dried soil. And then the darker little mound is of burnt sugarcane, the ash that is used to that helps color the markings on the 3 ceramic vessels. And then the final pile is a little pile of sugarcane chippings that is burnt to create the ash, which as it burns, it fires and hardens the clay and also creates the patterning within on the surface of those pieces. So in a sense, the sculptural piece itself and the materials of it, it tells the story of its own making in a very immediate and I think very accessible direct way. And these pots, the forms themselves are redolent of a traditional pot in India that is used for cooking, for storage of foodstuffs, etc. So it's a traditional. It's called a iota pot that functions and one is a form that Sancintia uses in other sculptural installations as well. Over then at Chapter, Sancintia's solo presentation is also in Cardiff. A Chapter is this new piece made in 2025, commissioned for the Sharjah Biennial over in UAE in spring of 25, and then we were able to present it again. What we see here are 3. This piece, sorry, I should say, is called Kapalkari, Kulikari. What we see here are 3 scroll-like, not scroll-like, 3 scroll drawings, long drawings, staggered at staggering heights, as is very evident here from this image, but also staggered lengths. The table on the left-hand side is obviously much bigger than the one on the far right. Sancintia here deliberately using the format of a scroll drawing, one that is a way to inscribe history, a way to record, but also a form that is portable in the way that the ceramic vessels themselves, again, are forms that hold information as in a metaphorical sense, or hold a spirit, or hold an idea, but also are a way to hold something and to transport it more easily. And the three large-scale drawings each have inscribed in 3 different languages different lyrics or different lines from different traditional folk music, shall I say, of the diaspora of these Indian women who were forcibly moved to work in the sugar plantations. So it's 3 different languages, 3 different communities, different words from songs that talk about home, talk about belonging, talk about the everyday in many ways. And as with the piece from MCA Chicago, MCA Sydney. Again, highly detailed surfaces and in terms of the technique used on this handmade wassily paper. Again, mixtures of water, sugar plantation fields, written descriptions, and then figurative elements of women at work in the plantation, or looking, or preparing food, or playing with children, or looking after family. And looking after each other, most importantly. The second element of this installation is this. This is just a detail. It's handwritten on the wall. That talks about, I mean, I think if you read that, they gave us the name Cooley that we trace, remembered routes along our veins we unmap against. It's talking about traveling. It's talking about taking traditions and ideas and belonging with you and being uprooted from home. It talks of the language also suggests connections between forms, remembered routes along our veins. You start to imagine traced lines, be that a line drawn on a map from A to B, or the line of a blood vessel, that you might see within your own body. The way that carries information, carries traditions, carries histories with us. And this is hand drawn directly onto the wall using the sugarcane ash and just suspending that within some water. So it rather looks like, it has that sort of brownish black that charcoal has. And so this written poem next to the 3 scroll drawings forms one complete work. Some installation views now of other parts of the gallery at Chapter. This large scale piece called Vessel. This is the 6th iteration, and it always comprises mounds of soil in all sorts of different configurations, populated by more of these eotas, these ceramic pots, some of which have speakers inside, and there is a sound component, a rather sort of ambient, at times quite forceful, quite sort of strident sounding, other times quite sort of ambient and textural. So that sort of fills the space with sound. And on the opening night, Sanchintia made a performance where she activated this installation. You can see in her hand there this like beater like form, which had got like a contact mic within it, and by wrapping it gently against all the different pots, she moved around the space, hitting gently each pot. It creates those harmonic sounds, rather like in the way that if you rub your finger, or your wet finger, around the rim of a wine glass, it generates a sound that is the natural harmonic of that vessel form. So the piece itself was activated as a live performance. Another installation view of more works on paper. And then in the gallery at the far end of a Chapter, there's this short video, which is shot on film and then transferred to video, and has a really rather sort of beautiful pastel-like colouring of it. Starts off again, rather like with Antonio's work, the sense of being rooted in landscape, and everything that might mean is quite key. Starts off with these views of this sugar plantation, and then the protagonist with the camera moves through this network of the growth. And then comes out the other end, you see smoke, and then there's this sort of roar within the soundtrack, which progressively gets louder and louder as the fire is burning off the remnants after the sugar cane has been harvested. Also within this the environment of this room, there is the scent of like burnt wood, and again there is a diffuser there that is scented with the ash suspended in liquid of burnt sugarcane. So it's very evocative in terms of placing you in a sense of the here and now in terms of the pictures that you're seeing. The final piece that I want to show you is a second work on paper, and this is one along with the large scroll drawings that are two of the pieces that I think are making their way into the National Collection. This is a brand new piece made for by Sancintia for the Artes Mundi 11 for her Artes Mundi 11 show. It's again on this handmade paper, this wassily paper, rather operates like a concertina book. You can see the many folds that are there, and again continues the pictorial depiction of women at play and at labor and at leisure, and waiting for something, working at something, working with family, working in the plantation, in the fields. But it's quite sort of quietly joyous, I think, in terms of the depictions that are there. And that, I think, is the last image. Yeah. So I'll stop sharing now.
Thanks, Nigel. Right, we get to the point where people can ask questions. There's nothing in the chat box yet, but hopefully there will be. For those who want to ask a question, you're now able to unmute yourselves, and I suggest that you use either gallery view or speaker view just to see who's talking and that. In the meantime, I'm going to ask the first question, simply because I've got control of the controls, I suppose. Nigel, we know, because it's quite well written up, how the Artes Mundi Prize is chosen and how, if you like, the criteria for that. I've never seen that written up for Derek Williams Trust, and I wondered what's the criteria for that choice and who makes it?
Okay. Well, since I've been director for the 3 iterations so far, the work that's been acquired, the panel for that has always comprised myself, a member of senior staff from the National Museum, and a representative from Derek Williams Trust, and also, although it didn't happen for this current edition, but usually then there's also an external person, generally a curator or a director of another institution, more often than not within the UK, who can also bring forth their knowledge and experience, perhaps of the artists who are being considered, of the works that are being considered, providing a larger overview of works that are in different museum collections across the UK. and who can maybe, and as I say, who can speak to the particular qualities of all of the artists whose work is being considered. The representative from National Museum Wales, or from Museum Wales, I should say, is really there to talk about criteria and priorities within the national collection. You know, having that overview of the different thematics, and one thing that is discussed is how different works by different artists might sit alongside other works, be them historical, modern, or contemporary, thinking of how they would help activate stories and narratives, connecting not only international ideas and themes, but how they resonate at a very immediate level locally or nationally within Wales, and how they resonate with other works in the collection for future exhibition making. And so it's those kinds of dialogues, I think, if you like, from the local to the international, from the specifics of the National Collection for Wales to the broader museum collections within the UK, that are certainly all brought to bear on the deliberations and the discussions, and also then from the representative of the trust. Obviously, there's many works currently on display at the National Museum Cardiff building that are on loan from the trust, and the works that Derek Williams Trust has acquired over the years. Again, how work sits within that context as well. So all of these are the sort of tectonic plates that all sort of come into play with each other as well. And sometimes there are pragmatics as well, you know, to do with value and affordability and all of those kind of things. I mean, certainly in the past, a recipient, I think in the work that was acquired is 2018. It was Ragnar Kjartason, who I think was that the 7th edition of Artes Mundi. The work that he had as part of Artes Mundi was a new multi-channel video work that was shown at Turner House in Penarth, called The Vistas, which coincidentally Adrian Searle a couple of years ago thought it was the best artwork of the 21st century so far. Because that work couldn't be acquired, but the panel were really compelled and convinced to want something by Ragnar within the collection. What transpired from that was, rather than a work that was there on show, Artes Mundi worked with Museum Wales to co-commission a new piece, which was then presented in the gallery with the National Museum with the large organ. And Ragnar had all of the paintings removed, so it's just the sort of pale blue damask silk fabric of that environment, and the performance of that work happened then. So that's an occasion where through the support of the trust and some additional fundraising, the partnership took on a slightly different relationship, and a new work was acquired, which again I think is a really great legacy and a great model maybe for future, if there's a particular artist who it's felt it would be great to have their work within the national collection, but one of the works that of the works that are on display, they're not suitable for whatever reason.
Oh, thanks. That's I because the chair of the Derek Williams Trust is sitting in on this, I thought I would try and get an impartial view as to how this happens. I still don't have any other questions. Are there any questions? Because I've got one more myself, if otherwise. Oh, right, there we are.
I've got a question actually, Nigel. It's some years since we've had a Welsh or even a British artist at Artes Mundi, and I wondered whether you felt that there were artists, who are known to us that might possibly be shortlisted at some time in the future.
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, it's always it's interesting because the process for nominations actually for the 12th edition will open at the beginning of April, so very very soon. And it's always rather interesting to because there is no limit geographically put on where an artist might be nominated from or by whom. It is completely open. I mean, in many ways, you could argue it is the most democratic nomination process that is possible. I wonder at times if there's a degree of self-censorship, perhaps from UK-based artists, partly because of the trajectory of Artis Mundi over successive editions, or because people think Artis Mundi is a certain kind of or because they think Artis Mundi somehow is only interested in a certain kind of practice. I mean, I like to think that if you go on our website and you look at successive, all of the artists who have taken part, and also artists that Artis Mundi has worked with outside of the biennial exhibition and the prize, there's a great diversity there, not only of practice, but of origin, of thematic issue-based work, etc., etc. So certainly there is no conscious or unconscious obstacle to a UK artist being nominated and subsequently selected. We are, and also I should say, Artes Mundi as organisationally doesn't select the artists. We work with a curatorial panel, and that they are the selectors. So it's in many ways it's out of our hands, but I say there's certainly no obstacle there at all. I mean, in my time as director, I'm certainly aware that there are artists who are UK based. In fact, in this current edition, Jemana Emil Abu, whose solo presentation is also at Mostin in Llandudno, while not, she's Palestinian by birth, but she's resident, living and working in London. So that's certainly in my time, that's the first occasion there's somebody who has been UK based over the 3 editions since I've been director. But no, I can't emphasize enough that there is no obstacle or no block or no unsaid parameter that would stop somebody being nominated or being considered. It comes down to discussions at the time from the curatorial panel, because often we get around about 400 to 600 artists nominated. So you can imagine it's highly, highly competitive, and then all sorts of nuanced conversation and deliberation emerges as when that list is being whittled down and down and down and down to those artists who will be presented in a particular edition. But no.
If I could just ask a supplemental question, then, do you think that your selection of the selectors can influence, what kind of artist, or let's say a pan-Europe artist might be sort of chosen?
I suppose that's always a possibility. We deliberately seek to have a curatorial panel that in and of itself is diverse in terms of knowledge, experience, where people maybe have lived and worked and born, so that we have so that in many senses we are tapping into knowledge, a depth of knowledge and experience and networks as globally as we can, and that's why there's always 3 or 4 people within the selection panel. And so certainly, again, speaking just in my time as director, there have always been people who are either living and working within Europe, or within Western Hemisphere, or within or maybe if they're working elsewhere in the world, they may have studied in Europe or have had previous jobs in European institutions. So again, I like to think we do work hard to try to ensure that sort of global range of experience and knowledge and networks, whereby there isn't even an unconscious bias against somebody who is European based. This time round, one of the selectors, Marie-Helene, she's Senegalese, but she's currently living and working in Berlin. She's a senior curator at a Berlin museum, and is also involved on the curatorial panel for the forthcoming Venice Biennale in May. So again, a great breadth of knowledge of artists within, and not only, but also the diasporic artists who find themselves living and working within Europe. So, of course, something is always a possibility, but I'd like to think not, whereby because of the way we put things in place to try to ensure that there is that sense of a global conversation. Mm-hmm. And I think certainly the one of the points about this sort of human condition, one of the ways in which that is considered is very much about that dialogue between the international and the local, and the resonance that can be created. And I think in our current edition that's very present. Jemana's performance, for example, that was up at Mostyn on the opening night there, working with 3 Welsh practitioners, writers and artists who are based in that part of North Wales, rooted in the history of water sources and the folk tales that are associated with those. And on the gallery walls, fragments of texts in English and Arabic and Welsh as well. You know, a whole series of workshops whereby that work was, that performative work, and the storytelling that came out of that was developed, and some of the objects that are present. So always working to reveal and unwind those connective dialogues, I think, rather than something just parachuted in from somewhere else in the world. Okay. So what, you know.
That's really helpful, actually, Nigel. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Right. Well, I still don't see any other questions in the chat box. So unless there's one out there that somebody wants to throw from nowhere, left field or otherwise, doesn't look like it. In that case, I'm going to just wind up by thanking Nigel for talking to us today. It's been very interesting, actually, to get detailed insight into some of the artists, whereas when we all went round the exhibition, it obviously had to be a much sort of smaller one. I still think, mind you, that Sanchincha's map, or whatever it is, of the sugar plantation reminds me of the slave ones in the West Indies, the same type of concept, and
very much so.
But without people being raped in the middle of them, slightly different. But there we are. Okay, so our next talk is going to be on Wednesday, the 25th of February. That's going to be by the artist Paula MacArthur. It's an online talk, and so we'll be sending out the details fairly shortly. So finally, if everybody'd like to switch over to gallery view and put their microphones on and just say thank you to Nigel in the normal manner. Thank you very much, Nigel, and
Thank you.
good to see you again. Cheers.
Thanks to CASW. Thanks for the support again for this edition. I can't say how much it's valued. Really essential, enabling us to do what we set out to do. So thanks to all of the members here and all those I think on YouTube, etc.
Okay. Thanks, everybody, and good night.
Okay. Bye then.